All right, 3F. This one's kind of a two-parter. We're gonna graph, and then we're also gonna find the inverse of this guy. So I have -2 cosine of 1/3 x minus 1. It says graph at least one period. So the negative out front of cosine is a reflection over the x-axis. Remember, outside is kind of up and down. So if you think about that reflection over the x-axis, that's vertical. I also have a 2 out front. That's going to give me an amplitude of 2. You can also think of that as a vertical stretch of 2. And I have a cosine graph going on here. So cosine is a jump rope. Since I reflect it over the x-axis, it's going to start at the minimum. So my jump rope is going to start kind of in the down position. All right, let me switch colors here. 1/3 in front of x affects the period of the function. It's going to be a horizontal stretch. So we do 2 pi divided by the number in front of x. So that's really 2 pi times 30. So the period of my function is 6 pi. No phase shift on this one, a little bit of a break. We do have a vertical displacement. Our vertical displacement is -1, down 1. So what I'm going to do there, so I don't forget about it, is go ahead and dot in my midline right when I recognize that. Okay, now let's graph. So I'm doing my upside down jump rope. I have no phase shift, so I'm going to start on the y-axis. I'm going to start down 2, since my amplitude is 2. So I'm going to be at -3, down 2 from my midline. So I'm going to start at that minimum of -3. My period here is 6 pi, so my next minimum is going to be out at 6 pi, which I probably should mark. So there's pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5 pi, 6 pi. So my next minimum is way out here at 6 pi. Halfway in between, I have that max. So halfway in between is going to be at 3 pi, and I'm going to go up 2 from my midline. Be careful that you're not going up 2 from the x-axis. Just go up 2 from your midline. And halfway in between is where you're going to cross your midline. So it's going to, I don't know if it feels a little awkward here because here are the 6 spaces in between, so it's only 3. Don't get worried if you sometimes have to put a point in between, or you have to estimate. That happens sometimes. All right. Just want to make sure you're equidistant from that midline. Domain is -infinity to infinity. We just graphed one period, but if we continue this function out, we have no domain restrictions, so it goes on forever. Hits all of our x values. Range is -3 to 1. Really double check that range and just don't see that you have an amplitude of 2 and think, oh, well then it's -2 to 2. All right, find the inverse of f. So our function was -2 cosine of 1/3 x minus 1. Again, we're going to switch x and y. And solve for y. Couple of things to do to unpack here. We have to add our 1 over first. Remember, we're doing opposite operations, so start furthest away from your y. Divide by that -2. And you can distribute that through on the top. You can write it out to the side. I'm just going to leave it where it is. And then in order to get into that 1/3 y, I have to undo the cosine. So I'm going to take cosine inverse or arc cosine. You can write it either way of both sides. And that's going to cancel those cosines. And then to get the y all by itself, you need to multiply by 3. And you can really just write that out front of your cosine. 3 arc cosine x plus 1 over negative 2 equals, oops, sorry, that should be a y. So there's your inverse. Again, to find the domain of your inverse, you need to know the range of your original. So if you go back up, the range of our original function was negative 3 to 1. So the domain of our inverse is going to be negative 3 to 1. That's it.